A farmer can plant a maize seed, watch it sprout into a towering stalk, and harvest the crop, knowing that certain plants will continue growing taller and wider for years. But that same farmer stopped growing physically decades ago. Biologically, growth is defined strictly as an irreversible increase in dry mass. A plant taking up water and physically swelling is not true growth, because that water content fluctuates daily. Real growth requires the permanent addition of biological tissue. This sequence shows the three-step microscopic engine that drives mass increase. First is mitosis, where a single cell divides into two identical copies. Next is cell elongation, where these new cells take in resources and stretch. Finally, cell differentiation occurs, where the expanded cells specialize into specific types, like nerve cells or xylem tubes. Before the mechanics of plant and animal development diverge into different systems, every permanent increase in size relies entirely on this underlying cellular process. Plant growth is localized. While an animal's body generates new cells across its entire structure, a plant restricts cell division to specific, actively dividing zones called meristems. We can track this by looking at a bean seedling. By marking the stem with waterproof ink at exact 1 millimeter intervals, we establish a baseline to observe exactly where the physical expansion happens over time. 3 days later, the marks at the very top stretch far apart from one another, indicating rapid cellular expansion. Meanwhile, the marks near the base remain completely static. This shows that primary growth, the increase in height, is an upward-pushing mechanism driven exclusively by the cellular factories at the tips of the shoots and roots. Plants also increase in thickness or girth. This is known as secondary growth, and it is controlled by an internal division zone called the lateral meristem, or vascular cambium. In this cross-section of a tree trunk, you can see the vascular cambium dividing. As it expands outward, it adds layers of phloem to the outside and rings of xylem to the inside, which creates the annual rings we see in woody plants. Knowing apical meristems drive upward growth, why do farmers cut the absolute tops off coffee trees to improve crop yield? Removing the apical meristem at the top stops upward growth. This forces the plant to redirect its energy into the lateral meristems, resulting in a bushier tree with more branches to produce coffee beans. Plant growth is a redirectable system. When one path is blocked, the cellular engine simply reroutes its resources to another available zone. Animal growth follows a different set of rules. It is determinate, meaning it reaches a hard stop at maturity, and it is generalized, occurring across the entire body rather than in isolated tips. This life cycle is mapped using a sigmoid curve, which charts the mathematical progression of an animal's size from birth through adulthood. The curve begins with a slow lag phase during infancy, then angles sharply upward into the log phase. This is the period of rapid exponential cell division during youth. As the animal reaches maturity, growth slows down until it levels off into the stationary phase. Unlike plants, animals are programmed to reach a physical limit. Once an organism hits the stationary phase, cellular energy is used exclusively for repair and maintenance rather than further growth. To apply these concepts to an examination scenario, consider this. Why is dry mass a more reliable measure of growth than fresh mass? Fresh mass includes water, which changes daily depending on hydration. Dry mass is the only definitive measure of growth because it reflects the actual buildup of biological tissue after all water is removed. This matrix outlines the core differences. Plants grow throughout their lives in localized zones, using both primary and secondary growth. Animals stop growing at maturity and expand generally across their entire bodies. Biological growth is the process of converting environmental nutrients into living tissue. Whether an organism builds outward indefinitely or follows a programmed physical limit, these mechanical differences determine how every living thing reaches its final form.